5 focus areas that Novartis is working on, as well as the technology platforms. But in terms of gene therapy, in terms of cell therapy, in terms of breakthrough innovations, as you look at your portfolio today, what are you most excited about?
So this is a topic I love to talk about because, I mean, the transformations have been incredible. When you think about it, for most of the history of our industry, we've been about chemical entities and then what we call biologic drugs. So, you know, a few types of medicines. And then over the last decade, we've had this explosion in science. When you think about all of the things that we've learned about human genome, RNA, cell therapies, and so now you see actual drugs approved. So Novartis, we're the largest gene therapy player in the world, and we have gene therapies. We're the largest radioligand therapy. It's a new technology that actually treats cancer, many solid tumors. We're the largest producer of RNA interference drugs in the world, which is this whole new area which allows you to silence proteins in the body to treat diseases. And what this does is it allows us to expand both the number of diseases we can treat, but also how we treat them. When I think about this drug Leqvio I mentioned, an siRNA, twice a year, and you're able to control cholesterol by 60%. And so this is where I think medicine is going to move, to these newer technologies, which on the first end will allow you to be at the high end. But on the other hand, for access to places like India, when you can get to very infrequently administered medicine for heart disease, imagine what we could do to the hundreds of millions of patients who need these medicines.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. You know, specifically when we talk about some of these breakthrough innovations, and we're starting to see some signs of, or at least some signs of experimenting here in India with CAR T therapy and so on and so forth. How do you make all of this accessible? How do you scale all of this up to be able to cater to needs of a population like India?
Again, it's going to be a long journey. It won't happen overnight. But when you go back again in the history and you look at biological drugs in the 1980s and 90s, people like us were probably sitting there saying, how will we ever get this to the masses? And now biologic drugs are available globally because we've been able to bring down the production costs over time. We've been able to scale up in new ways how to actually get the access to patients who need it. And this, of course, allows the access to happen. I think a similar story will happen. The first generation cell therapies are very complex and cumbersome. As we get better and better in Novartis labs, we're even thinking about ways to how do you make cell therapy just happen inside the patient so you don't need all of the complex architecture. Similarly, you know, I think similar things could happen with gene therapy. With small interfering RNA therapy, these are already therapies I think you could get to the masses over time because the production costs have come down quite significantly.
You know, what we saw through COVID, especially as far as the vaccine manufacturing was concerned, was the way that we could bring the time down for this to get to the market. With the kind of R&D spends, and you're doubling down on R&D expenditure at this point in time, what can we realistically expect in terms of time to market for some of the drugs that you're working on?
You know, I think there will be some acceleration, but I think what's important to note is COVID was a very unique circumstance. I mean, here we really knew the disease, we knew the virus, we knew the disease, we understood the virus, and regulators felt very comfortable moving extremely quickly. I think what I observe now in global regulators is they learned how to accept trial data in new formats, how to allow us to run clinical trials much more quickly, but they also rightfully come back to a place where they want real hardcore evidence. And I really believe for the long run of our sector, you need strong regulators because the public has to trust the medicines, and we see that also with COVID vaccines. The public has to trust what ultimately we come to market with. So I'm not so upset that in the end regulators go back and say, look, what is the right thing for cancer? What is the right thing for heart disease? Let's get the right standard for the right disease and then hold companies accountable.
You know, and I agree with you that there is need for strong regulators and strong regulation. But what about harmonization of regulation, especially as we look at cross-border challenges? I mean, this is a universal issue that we're talking about. How do you see the need for harmonization as far as standards and regulation?
I mean, I think it's a great question, and it's been an industry challenge for a long, long time. I mean, so it's been really hard to get global regulators to look at these things in a similar way. Not a lot of progress has been made on the front. And I think it's an opportunity. I mean, if you think about the Indian regulator, how could they leverage what the Europeans do or the US does? How could they harmonize a lot of the work that they do? Because one of the things that then, of course, creates delays for patients getting access is when one regulator has a different set of expectations than another. So, for instance, many countries, including India, require local studies. And you could debate, maybe in some instances it's a good idea, But in many instances, the fact that we've already done thousands of patients all around the world, why do you want another local study to delay access? I think there's a lot more we can do on harmonization for sure.
You know, since we are talking about regulators and regulation, I just wanted to understand how you view the recent incidents that we've seen happen, where there have been Indian companies involved with incidents of spurious drugs, contaminated drugs, and so on and so forth, which the World Health Organization has acted against. How do you read those developments, and what do you make of them?
I think it's very concerning because, of course, you see, as a physician scientist, it's very concerning to see some of the impact of children, especially in some of the contaminated products. I think it really erodes the public trust that we've talked about earlier. We really need to have all companies, including companies in India, maintain the quality standards that makes the public trust our medicines. So I think it's very important we act quickly and that we get to the bottom of these situations, and then we raise the standards. And I think most countries, as they go through this journey to become more innovative, knowledge-based in their industries, including in biotechnology, they have to get the quality standards up. And so I think that's absolutely critical. And I think for India, and especially Indian companies, to become global players, you have to meet those quality standards. I mean, the US FDA is probably the toughest regulator in the world, and it's the largest market in the world. And so to make that transition, you have to get to the quality standard that the world expects.
You know, as you talked about how you're transitioning from a transformation journey now to the execution journey, what are the next milestones that you're going to be mapping as far as this journey is concerned?
Well, the big one is the expected spin of Sandoz, which would be
on track for the second half?
On track for the second half, and that's a very big undertaking. I mean, that's a 25,000 person spin. It's second large-scale spin we've done over the recent years after Alcon. So that's a big undertaking. That's one critical milestone. The next is we have a very large transformation program undergoing right now in the company, and really seeing through that this year so that the setup of the company is the right one. And then it'll come down to our 9 big global medicines that we think have multi-billion-dollar potential, and showing that each one of those medicines is on the right track. We have some very exciting launches, one in prostate cancer, another in blood cancers, another one ongoing in cardiovascular disease, this drug Leqvio. We really need to show these launches are on track as well. And if we get those 3 things right, then I think it'll really be an exciting story for us in the years to come.
And on the launch front, is the data telling you that you are on track?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, our big challenge in some of these launches, the demand is exceeding our initial expectations. So I think those are good signals. And I think the other thing that's happening now in the post-pandemic environment, we're seeing healthcare systems open back up, getting back up to normalization, particularly for us important in US, Europe, and China. We do expect China to normalize in the second half. And that gives a lot of tailwinds to the business, especially when you have launch medicines.
You know, one of the big issues that is currently being debated is, of course, the issue as far as patents are concerned. Evergreening continues to be a big challenge, and that is one of the accusations that is often made against Big Pharma. As you look at where we are today and the need for access, the need for affordability, you know, where do we find the balance?
Well, I think as many topics right now, everything goes to extremes, right? You have the extremes on the industry saying that we need to protect fully all of the innovations, and on the other side talking about evergreening. And the truth, of course, is in the middle. And really, what we need to find is the right patent frameworks, including in a country like India, that protects legitimate innovation. Because otherwise, high-end, high-science, technology-based industries can't thrive in a country. And I think there is a right middle ground. Certainly, the goal is not to do evergreening, but the goal is when you make legitimate innovations that improve the profile of a medicine, it should be protected. Data, regulatory data should be protected. IP should be instituted and then appropriately defended in a reasonable time frame. That's what creates an innovation ecosystem. And I think we can get there in most markets. The biggest concern I have globally is there is this push to pull back. And I think what that would do is damage many innovative sectors, not just ours. Because I think the patent framework is what allows human society to defend incredible technological advances. And if you start eroding that, you may not see it, but over decades, you will see innovation come down. And I think it would be better for society to really embrace the fact that we want to protect incredible innovations.
And find a middle path.
And find the middle path, yes.
So let me end by asking you, as a physician scientist, and now CEO, you know, do you believe that your approach to this job is different because of that? And how do you see the role of science, innovation. I mean, how much can you speed up science? That's been the big question through the course of the pandemic, which you also addressed. But, you know, because of your background, do you see your role as CEO differently?
I do, I think. I mean, fundamentally, the numbers that animate me, or maybe not the numbers that are in the income statement or in our balance sheet. It's
not the EPS.
It's the numbers of medicines we create for the world. It's the number of patients we reach with those medicines. I think what we sometimes lose in today's world, where we have so many great medicines and vaccines, is what an incredible story it is that for most of human history we had no medicines. You know, and in the end, in the last 150 years, we unpack 2 billion years of the evolution of a human cell, of any animal cell, in fact, and we find a single molecule that can transform the life of a cancer patient or transform the life of a heart disease patient. And the fact that we can do that again and again is an absolutely extraordinary achievement. I think of it, it's like building a rocket. I mean, we celebrate rockets when they go up into space. The fact that we find medicines...
Can we celebrate malaria drugs as much?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And if we could start to understand the magic that those medicines really are, that's what gets me excited. And every time we find a new technological advance that lets people live longer, healthier lives, that's pretty amazing.
Vaz, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Global Dialogue. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Shireen.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of the Global Dialogue. From all of us here on the team, goodbye and many thanks for watching.